This is Niche to meet you, and this is the third episode in our series about Santa portrayal artists. If you haven't listened to the first two, now would be a really great time to do that. Welcome. Glad you're here. The name C.W. Howard has been brought up a lot in these episodes. He's the education guru of Santa portrayal artists. He's on the Mount Rushmore of professional Santas. He's a big deal. And there's a quote attributed to him. If you spend more than 5 minutes with anyone who has gone to the Santa school, you'll hear this quote mentioned, and it goes a little something like this.
He errs who thinks Santa enters through the chimney. Santa enters through the heart.
This idea of something being from the heart. We use that phrase a lot, don't we? And I heard a lot of Santas say it, even outside of an American context. Like Jerusalem Santa.
You need to do it from your heart. Everybody can be a Santa Claus. You can be a Santa Claus, okay? But you need to do it from heart.
Yeah, it sounds nice, and it's good, and we all say it to each other like we know what it means, but do we really? I started asking this question of myself after I talked to a lot of Santas. Like, when Sirius Black says to Harry that his parents are always available in his heart, what does this really mean? The first couple times hearing the phrase, you offer a smirk and a nod, but after you've heard it several times, you start to wonder what it's getting at. Like when you say the same word over and over and it begins to lose its fortitude, its identity, its fidelity. In this episode, we're going to look further at this, finish up the series by dissecting what it really means for something to come from the heart, especially when you're portraying Santa. To answer these existential questions brought about by a well-meaning quote from a apple farmer turned famous Santa coach, I think we should look at an origin story, one that lays out a clear example of a why argument of what the heart has to do with any of it. Some Santa's origin stories are happy, delightful, like for Santa J.
Years and years and years ago, I don't know when or what date it was, but I'm sure I was seeing one after the other of these kids just exploding when they got to the front of that line and they were next to see Santa and they were so excited and, the joy in their faces and the parents were the same way. And I looked at my wife and I told her, I said, when I retire, I want to be a Santa Claus. I'm going to be Santa. I'm going to bring the Christmas spirit to all of these kids just like this moment. And that's what I've been striving for ever since.
And then there's Chris's story. He was featured in an HBO documentary called Santa Camp. He's young, about my age, and his love for Christmas was rooted in a love for his father, who also loved Christmas. And Chris is passing this love along to his own children.
We got pregnant with our daughter. She was supposed to be due on Thanksgiving Day. She was born a week before. So while they were in the hospital recuperating, I hired somebody to put up decorations. And when I needed just a slight mental break from being at the hospital 24/7, went to Walmart and they had a 4-foot inflatable Black Santa. I bought it off the floor and put it up so that when they got home, there'd be something special.
But even for Chris and his joys, he comes to this niche with loss weighing heavy on his shoulders, which is true for many in this community. Almost 10 years to the day before his daughter was born, his father passed away on Thanksgiving Day of 2004. I was particularly struck by the origin story of a Santa named Hop. And before we go on, I want to offer a content warning for those who struggle with the themes of infertility and pregnancy loss. You can skip ahead about 3 minutes. You won't miss the message. Santa Hop has a story that's fraught with pain and loss. Before he was Santa, he and his wife lost several late-term pregnancies in a row and then struggled to conceive.
We sought doctors' advice and counsel, and nothing worked. But we held on, and we had hope, so we just knew we was going to keep trying.
After all those years and losses, his wife did become pregnant. It was a healthy pregnancy and progressing along well. And then one day, while Hop was on lunch duty as an educator, his cell phone buzzed with a text from someone who knew their story. The woman told him that her daughter was pregnant and they could not keep the baby.
We were wondering if you guys would consider adopting this child. So got home, gathered my wife, we had a meeting, our mouths dropped, and we were like, yes, we'll do it.
His son was born on December 8th, and 6 weeks later, they brought home a newborn baby girl. After settling into their new reality, Hop, who also has a real white beard at the same time, gets invited by a local photographer who had experienced similar losses to participate in a special personal photo shoot.
So she was going to do a rainbow baby photo shoot because she too had experienced that. And it dawned on her she had never asked her husband how he was. So she wanted to do a rainbow baby photo shoot because she wanted to capture the male perspective. So we show up. All the couples are in the colors of the rainbow, Roy G. Biv. So we were the red couple. So we show up and she saw this beard. And the photographer, she asked my wife if I would be willing to put on a Santa suit and do Christmas mini sessions for her. And my wife told me to do that. So next thing you know, I'm in the studio. It's Christmas. We're doing promo shoots. And she sold out in less than 3 minutes.
For him, the purpose of Santa's story started with tragedy and was fueled entirely by hope, and imagining that there's still more story to be written.
While we were struggling with child loss, we were at church. And at our church, we have what we call Watch Night service. That's the New Year's Eve service. My wife got up enough courage to testify and really talk about our experience. So we're standing on the stage. She's sharing our story. This is 2015. And I had no intentions to say anything. So after she finishes, she handed me the microphone. And I made the declaration that night. I said, well, listen, by this time next year, I'll be changing stinky diapers. So we held on to that, and it's faith, is hope. So even when things don't go your way, you can still hope.
Regardless of the kind, loss is a core part of what it means to be human, right? We spend our living days actively pushing death away, consciously and subconsciously. It's not something we like dwelling on. But in the holiday season, it can sometimes be all we think about, because we arrive again at traditions that maybe for the first time or the 10th time are missing someone or something, and that hurts. But the imagination of the possibility that there is still life ahead, that's what hope is. It reminds me of this quote I heard once, that hope is a refusal to accept that this is the way the world has to be and to insist that it can be different, to throw your life behind that possibility. I see this at work in the Santa story. It's as if they know the pain actively. And the heart of Santa is to enter into it. But why does it seem to actually work? It actually moves people. It draws emotion out of them in a really meaningful way, such that some of these performance artists tell stories that only Santa could be part of, like Mrs. Claus Yvonne, who got called to a house in which a boy had experienced the devastating loss of his mother.
So as we're driving there, I'm like, what are we going to say? And the son had gone nonverbal. So we go in and we go to his little room and we're all sitting, and I bring out a book and I read and we sing. He crawls up in Santa's lap and he puts his hands on his face and on his beard. And it was really the dad that needed help. Never think that, hey, I'm just a Santa, because it is important every day. So.
It's important because sometimes Santas bear the brunt of confused and scared little hearts and minds, or big hearts and minds, and they have an opportunity to steward it, to gently console, to comfort, to encourage.
Children that want dad to be back. When a child says, Santa, I want my dad. And, there's a ton of that kind of stuff. You got to handle that. Some ask for rolled pigs. I mean, believe it or not, that's kind of like an easy one. When I would hear those things, it just tore me up. It tugged at my heartstrings,
There's another Santa popular in familiar stories that can clue us into the important role of Santa in our suffering and our flourishing. But to find him, we have to step into a wardrobe and track down a lamppost. We'll be right back. Hey, listener. I want to take a quick break to say 3 things. First, I want to thank you for your listening time. We all have so many things we want to catch up on, especially at a time of year when all the best of lists are coming out. And yes, I did listen to Hysterical, and don't even get me started on the new season of Serial. I love that whale. So thank you. It's an honor you've chosen this show for 90 minutes of your precious time. Number 2, I hope you've stuck around because you like it. If so, consider joining our email list. Social media is not the place to connect like it used to be, and we have some big plans for next year we want to loop you in on. Find that in our show notes. 3, finally, we'd love to have a friendship with you. If you send us a short email to say where you are and what brought you to the show, we'll send a joke back, like a really good one. In fact, we have a whole intern devoted to writing them, and the jokes are just sitting there, waiting for someone to hear them. That person could be you. Email us right now, hello@niche2meetyou.show. We look forward to hearing from you. The Chronicles of Narnia book series was written in the 1940s and 50s by renowned Oxford professor C.S. Lewis. Lewis was a theologian, and as a member of the Christian faith tradition, I grew up hearing his name. I even read some of the Narnia books myself, which have now become beloved stories for folks inside and outside any religious contexts. Greta Gerwig is even set to direct a new series of Narnia films for Netflix. The most popular book in the series is called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It was voted among the 10 most popular novels of all time in a major national survey conducted by the BBC in 2003. In the book, there's a familiar character that arrives in the midst of all the fantastical creatures that live in the forest beyond the fur coats and the wardrobe. Most of the non-human characters are derived from mythology, centaurs and fauns, but this particular character breaks that mold. His character's history you already know, having listened to this show. He's rooted in human tradition. He's Father Christmas, and his presence is the beginning of the end of a curse in the land where it's always winter, but never Christmas. He arrives as the 3 children, the 4th having been entranced by the evil queen, are being led by the talking beaver couple through the forest, and they hear a sleigh behind them, called a sledge in the books. Thinking it's the Snow Queen, they hide in a cave and wait. Mr. Beaver goes out to explore and comes back in delight.
And see, this is a nasty knot for the witch. It looks as if her power is already crumbling,
says Mr. Beaver. The children emerge and are met with familiarity.
He was a huge man in a bright red robe, bright as holly berries, with a hood that had fur inside, and a great white beard that fell like a foamy waterfall over his chest. "I've come at last,"
he says.
"She's kept me out for a long time, but I have got in at last. Aslan is on the move. The witch's magic is weakening."
That voice you heard reading is a man named Malcolm Guite. He's a poet, a distinguished figure whose knowledge knows no bounds, especially about fellow Brits like G.K. Chesterton and C.S. Lewis. Now, Lewis kept the character of Father Christmas in the stories despite a lot of criticism, even famously from his friend and fellow writer and inkling J.R.R. Tolkien. He's responsible for Middle-earth and The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien hated this addition to the books, but Malcolm disagrees with him.
But I think it's a masterstroke, far from being a lapse in taste.
So you like it?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's true. I mean, I have to say that in my own life in this world, I have occasionally had the great honor of being, as it were, Father Christmas's vicar on earth. I have stood in for that important person and given presents to very small children. And I've had a little sense as they received their presents from me, albeit only Father Christmas's lifelike proxy, the sense of awe.
In fact, Malcolm is going to be Father Christmas for his own community's gathering this year, and it's appropriate. He has a bushy white beard, stark white hair, and unironically wears vests while smoking a pipe. He is the perfect Father Christmas, and not least of all, because he recognizes the importance of the character.
And I think he is an emblem of goodness, of course. So I'm very strongly in favor of Father Christmas, both in Narnia and here.
What we learn by looking at Lewis, including Father Christmas, is that he serves an important role in the story. He points to the need for stories and imagination for our well-being.
All of us, of course, are individuals, and we have to be good and practice good and try and flourish and encourage other flourishings in our own particular way. But although we're individuals, we inhabit a common culture, a kind of set of myths and stories that bind us to life that we've inherited over the centuries. And the great advantage of having that culture and knowing a bit of it and being able to tell stories is that in the storytelling, we can make available all kinds of goodness. But if you have a single figure that says a bit more than a collection of abstract words can say. People in Chesterton's day said, you shouldn't read children fairy stories because they'll be frightened by stories about giants.
Chesterton was a lot of things. Perhaps the most important for our purposes here, he was a writer of children's stories. And he believed that children, with their imagination, could make worse monsters under their bed than adults could imagine.
What they need to know is that there's a Jack the Giant killer, that in these stories, their fears are given an embodiment, which they quite like. They quite like seeing it on the outside. But they're also told a story of rescue and a story of the triumph of good over evil. And that's a story that needs to be told again and again to every generation.
The stories that we tell each other matter. And more than just for children, for us adults, too.
We think of it, as it were, not imagination as an abstract thing, but if you like, the fruits of imagination that we inherit, the great stories, the tragedies, the plays, the novels. Most of the really great ones, in one way or another, even the fairy stories, are partly about suffering and partly about death. They actually are about these things which we may have hidden and keep to ourselves.
By putting them in a story, they become visible and embodied. We give them voice and we can empathize with characters. Because it's human nature to think that these beautiful things we have should last forever.
We all think that a person is forever and not just for passing. When Shakespeare says to his beloved, shall I compare thee to a summer's day, thou art more lovely and temperate, he ends up saying, there's something of summer in you, but there's something better than summer. Summer's lease hath all too short a date, but thy eternal summer shall not fade. We keep on glimpsing the eternal in the beauties of this world, and then we experience pain and loss when they fly away from us. And so we're called through our sorrow to journey on to a joy that's still promised.
Lewis wrote these characters and his world of Narnia based on his worldview as a practicing Christian, having spent most of his life as an atheist. But he still believed that dreaming, imagination, awe, it's important for everyone because it gives us vehicles for hope in the midst of suffering, something holy.
When he talks about the moment of almost epiphany that he had reading George MacDonald's book, Fantastes, in the train, when he was a 16-year-old atheist, of course he knows he's reading a fantasy story, and he carried on being an atheist for years. But he says that in some way his imagination was baptized, that something so beautiful and good and golden, something which he calls holiness, in fact, was given to him in that book, which was working slowly in him all the time.
A baptized imagination could be considered recognizing the presence of possibility, and it compels us to keep waking up every day, dreaming, accomplishing. Santa Hops sees this in practice with the children he works with too, particularly among the kids he spent time with in behavior management programs. In his school district, they're called ISS and OSS.
What we have now is a generation who sometimes feels hopeless. They don't dream anymore. Pretty much there's an inverse relationship. As dreaming goes up, time in ISS and OSS goes down. As dreaming goes down, ISS and OSS goes up. So our kids who give schools the most problems, they don't dream. So part of my job is to really get them to dream and have hope. And the most powerful form of motivation is intrinsic.
So how do you intrinsically motivate a student?
By letting them see possibilities. Even me putting on a Santa suit and a young black male seeing me come through school as an elementary student. Okay, I believe again. So we have believers who stopped believing. So as long as you have a desire to improve, you'll never be on Santa's naughty list. And that's our mission. That's what we do.
Wow.
Yeah. Santa Hop is a hope dealer.
It sounds almost too silly to take seriously that this educator is helping children believe in possibility by dressing up as Santa. They know him. They know that the dressed up character is their principal, but what we're talking about here in Santa Hop's story is imagination, making physical an idea that gives us a reason to wake up in the morning to make different choices. It's not tangible. It's shrouded in mystery. There's a celebrity figure right now in the world of professional Santa artists. His name is Santa True. He's a sort of modern-day C.W. Howard, an educator. He has his own school and is called on for segments and virtual workshops, but he's also a thinker, a Santa philosopher, if you will. He and I met at the International Santa Celebration, and I asked him about what it means to believe in Santa Claus.
It's my belief we should all believe in 7 impossible things every day. Because remember, we believe we have control, that, somebody isn't going to hop across the lane and smash our car, so on and so forth, but we have no control over that. And the best we can hope for is that everything goes along well. But the thing is more important is learning how to believe in the things that give you validation, right? And Santa, in a very strange way, is that person who's traveling through your life, who sees you every year or so and says, "You're awesome. You're doing a great job. I'm so proud of you." And because he knew you, and he knew your mother, and he knew your grandmother, and it's this little check-in from the universe that's saying, "You're awesome, and I'm so proud of you." And that's technically what Santa is all about. He's a representation of something bigger in the universe.
This is poetry in its most basic form, making feelings tangible. Shakespeare said, "As imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them to shapes. Santa makes hope a shape, and that is powerful." In light of all this, it seems fitting to me that the world comes to know of our modern-day Santa through a poem. These words are how the figure and character of Santa Claus is imagined and painted and formed in our understanding of him. But all along, that story was only meant to make real an abstraction, something that, until that time, was known to communities as a festive way of sharing what Christmas meant. That Santas looked different from each other because Santas looked like them and their community. Like their firefighters, their teachers, their facilities manager, their post office workers. It mattered that there isn't one single Santa because we are not one single monolithic community, and we need unique reminders of purpose and hope that make sense for us and our losses, both individual and collective. Santas get asked some really hard questions. Here's Mrs. Claus Yvonne again.
A lot of people don't ask for toys and things. A lot of people ask for other people to come home. I had a kid that her dad was deported, or a little boy that said, "My grandma's in the hospital. I just want her to be home." And those kind of people that really need something more. And Santa opens that door.
Another Santa who knows this intimately is Jerusalem Santa. We met him in the last episode. His workshop is in a 700-year-old grotto in the Christian quarter of Jerusalem, and since October 2023, the role he plays each year has taken on a nuanced importance, although from his perspective, nothing has changed with his posture while wearing the red suit.
When I start as to be Santa till this moment, I never change. I don't let nobody stop me. When I do my oath, I promise to God to give the best for the children.
Have you seen the children change?
Yes. First, in beginning, they are worried. Last year, actually, some kids came here and say, "Oh, Santa, do you think the war will finish soon?" I have, one of the sadness things that, please, Santa Claus, my father is in the army. Please pray. I want him to be back to me. I don't want him to be in the army. Can you bring him back? I can't promise children because I can't just always promise and I cannot do. I always tell them, let's pray for that. And God will help us.
If you don't believe in the invisible or mystery and how it can bring meaning to the human experience, this whole series may not be for you. Or maybe it is, because I wonder, as best we can keep ourselves together, we can reach moments of great intangible mystery. When we get to the end of the logical, physical reality, we approach mystery. The unexplicable and untouchable emotions, feelings, and thoughts that are every bit as real as the tangible. Moments like funerals, experiencing natural beauty, enjoying delicious food. They provide opportunity for spiritual reckoning. This is soul stuff. We are bodies and we are souls. We exist in the physical and the spiritual. And the work of the professional Santa is proof of this. But it's a hard undertaking. To quote Santa Ben,
a lot of weight in faith, a lot of weight in hope, there's a lot of weight in love, and so there's a lot of weight in joy.
At the end of a season, the Santas are exhausted because soul work is hard work. Ben himself told me that after his very last gig on Christmas Eve last year, he sat on his couch and wept. This year, he has 80 gigs in the month of December. Santa Phil, the Santa historian and lifelong Mr. Claus, spends 200 days out of his year as Santa Claus. He walks to work to keep in shape. He doesn't eat or drink on the job so that he doesn't have to take restroom breaks.
There's days you can put it on cruise control because things are flowing good. There's days the challenges are in there when you have autistic children. There's challenges in there when you have people that just fall apart on you, mainly because you're the only hope they have, and they tell you things you don't even want to hear. Sometimes adults, sometimes children, but that's the way this modern world is. And so you got to reassure them it's going to be okay. You don't know what's in their world.
So, what does it mean for Santa's work to come from the heart? I think it means that the work this niche does is entirely meant for the heart. And so it matters why a person is taking up the red suit and what they do with it. And at that heart of Santa, that place that C.W. Howard says Santa enters through, it's about using all of the complexities and dynamics of the person of Santa in a way that truly changes the world, even the world of just one person.
But I think the heart of a Santa really is you look at people. I physically can't give you a gift except of myself. Father Joseph Marquis of Detroit, he was the Hudson's Parade Santa for many years in downtown. He told me the bigger you get with this, the more you got to give back. And that came full circle with me in 1995. We had a little boy that was coming out to Santa's Village, and you could see there was something wrong with him, but every time he came out, he started losing his hair, so I knew he was sick. And I asked him one day, what would you like for Christmas? He goes, I want to fly with you and the reindeers. And well, I got deer and I got slaves, but I'm not going to get them off the ground. That ain't going to happen. Then it dawned on me, the float, the reindeer in the air. We got the little boy after the TV zone in Chicago. When we got past that TV zone, I looked down to Marshall, I gave the emergency signal, stop the float, which they stopped the float. What's wrong? I said, see that boy over there? Put him up here. So I put him in front of me. I handed him the message. You fly him up Michigan Avenue. So that boy got to fly those reindeer and sleigh float with 1 million people in Chicago that they watch you. But his dream came true and he died before Christmas that year. So I was in a position to make something happen, so I made it happen.
It's a great responsibility to wear the red suit.
Most definitely. There's no Santa job that's not important. Whether you're in a huge parade or you're in a theme park or in a big department store, you're doing a firehouse, you're doing a home visit. It's all the same thing. It's the same Santa.
In a season where marketing and sales are the driving force of public conversation and celebration, it seems a humble undertaking to put on a red suit and sit among both the joyous celebration and the pain that hides beneath the surface of it. See, the professional Santa portrayal artists of the world take up this hobby, this lifestyle, this role, and endure the tears and the snotty noses and the endless quirks of children because they want to bring joy and hope to the human heart where it might be lost. Perhaps even, and maybe especially, in yours.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Hi, this is Chris, and speaking for the rest of the Niche to Meet You team, I'd like to say that making this podcast together for you has been a true pleasure. We hope you will treasure it the way we do. And if you happen to be listening to this podcast right now, Leslie, Abby, Rachel, and I would like to wish every one of you a very Merry Christmas. and we hope the new year will be filled with more niche delights, thriving communities, exciting new hobbies, and above all, hope. Thank you very much.
Niche to Meet You is an independent audio project created, reported, and written by me, Leslie Thompson. Chris Thiessen is our associate script editor. Abigail Flowers composed our theme, and the music you hear under you at the moment is by John McLaughlin from his Christmas album, Mood. The rest of the music in this episode was provided by Blue Dot Sessions and Epidemic Sound. The series was mastered by Kevin Morris. If you like what you heard, consider listening to more episodes and leave a review. You can also email us to let us know who your favorite Santa was. You can just shoot us one right now, hello@niche2meetyou.show. Learn more about the Niche to Meet You project at www.niche2meetyou.show. And while you're there, sign up for our email list. Happy holidays.